Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Cannabis Business Times in partnership with Upwise Capital. We appreciate you joining us today. My name is Zach Mentz, Senior Editor of Cannabis Business Times, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by today's speaker and our guest for today's webinar, Joe Lustberg, CEO of Upwise Capital. Joe, thanks for joining us today. Really looking forward to talking a little bit about some unsecured and secured debt financing options today. But before we jump into that and some questions and information we got, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and Upwise Capital and what you guys do?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us, Zach. So Upwise Capital is a full-service debt financing platform for cannabis operators. On balance sheet, we will lend up to $10 million unsecured. Other than that, we are a full-service brokerage. We have over 200 capital sources signed up that will lend to the cannabis industry, including banks, private debt funds, REITs, hedge funds, and all different types of capital sources, whether leasing companies for equipment, account receivable financing. Really, we always say that we're a one-stop shop for financing for cannabis companies, and we're just really a little bit more experienced than most firms out there when it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, and experience is probably something that's really important given some of the difficulties of navigating this industry. And one of those difficulties is, of course, understanding financing options and what's available to you. Joe, it's not easy to do. There's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of wherewithal and knowledge you need to have. So I'm curious, Joe, can you just kind of lay out flatly what the differences are between secured and unsecured financing?
Yes, of course. So secured is going to be secured by some sort of asset, right? Whether that's real estate, equipment, account receivables, some sort of purchase orders, or just a blanket lien overall on the business assets. And in cannabis, the license is actually even considered an asset, which most people don't even think about that as a specific asset class. Unsecured is just based on the cash flow of the business, typically with just a UCC on the business. And that's a much quicker financing, able to give operators financing typically in 2 to 3 business days, and just give them access to quick, non-dilutive cash flow.
Gotcha. And can you, what does UCC stand for? Can you explain that to
Yeah,
somebody as well?
of course. It's a uniform commercial code. Just means you owe me money, right? So they will file a UCC on a business to say, hey, we gave this business some sort of debt, and they owe us financing and owe us, the principal and the interest back.
Gotcha. That's helpful to know as you try and navigate some of the terminology here. So you mentioned secured financing on the second part of that question, or excuse me, unsecured financing. What are some types of unsecured financing that's available to operators out there in the cannabis industry? Where can they find these options, and what kind of options exist?
Right here at Upwise. That's really our main bread and butter here is unsecured financing. Mm-hmm. So it's based on the cash flow of the business. So the operator has to be in business for at least 6 months. We're typically able to lend about 75 to 100% of their monthly gross sales, typically anywhere from 1% to as high as 3.5% per month. And we're lending based on the cash flow of the business. The other unsecured financing options that are available besides an unsecured cash advance, which is what we do internally, is unsecured line of credit. So very similar product. It's based on the cash flow of the business. It's a line of credit based on how much they're doing in monthly gross sales. So if they're doing $100,000 a month, we can typically give them around $100,000 line of credit, and they can draw on that as needed. With a line of credit, you're only charged interest on the money that you choose to draw. With the cash advance, it's one lump sum up front, and then you're on the payback term to pay back the loan.
Gotcha. So that's unsecured financing options. On the flip side of that, what type of secured financing options are available to cannabis operators?
Of course. So secured financing can be secured by any type of equipment. Could be real estate, inventory, right? So each one of those are going to have a specific lien on that asset. So you have real estate financing. With real estate financing in cannabis, there's 2 different types of buckets. You have real estate financing at the real estate value, and then you have real estate financing at the cannabis as completed value. So the value of a facility with all the cannabis tenant improvements once that building is completed with all the lights, the HVAC, everything, all the bells and whistles. And then you also have the equipment financing. That's strictly secured by the equipment. Account receivable financing, strictly secured by the account receivables. Most of those products are all going to require a personal guarantee as well. We also have term loans, which are 3 to 5 year term loan products. It's for profitable cannabis companies that are doing well and been in the industry for a little while. Those are some cheaper cost of capital products, and those just come with a blanket lien across all business assets. So that would have a lien on everything that the business owns. Same thing with a senior secured debt. Any type of senior secured loan, they're going to want a blanket lien across all business assets. With those types of products, you can get some more cheaper cost of capital, and you can even leverage some inventory as well. We do have inventory financing lenders. They will leverage inventory of dispensaries, leverage inventory of wholesalers, manufacturers, distributors. So we're able to leverage that inventory, and lend based on the amount of inventory that they're keeping on their balance sheet. So we really say that we have some really creative out of the box options for cannabis operators. That's why a lot of companies work with us. We're honest, we're trustworthy, and we always point them in the right direction and point them into the correct product that's available for their business.
Yeah, the part you mentioned about inventory there sounds really unique. Is that something you see a lot of, or is that something Upwise does regularly?
Yeah, we do see a lot of inventory financing. We have a few sources for inventory financing. Not many do it. It's definitely something new that's coming into the marketplace. But it's a great product for them to be able to take advantage of future customers and really not allow the lack of inventory or the lack of capital on hand to hinder their ability to make sales. So they're able to acquire much more customers with the ability to have that inventory financing line of credit in place.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think that's, I don't know if that's something a lot of operators are aware of, but it's certainly an interesting option for capital out there.
Definitely a little out of the box, and there's certain benefits to secured financing versus unsecured financing, right? So with secured financing, you're going to get a cheaper cost of capital because it's secured by some sort of asset, right? Think about it from an underwriter perspective or a credit officer's perspective. If there's an asset that is backing up that loan, they're much more comfortable to give you a more traditional rate or a much cheaper cost of capital. And an unsecured financing, it's quick financing, and you're kind of paying for the convenience of getting that capital quickly. So it's coming with a much higher cost of capital, but still cannabis operators, it's very difficult for them to access capital. So taking advantage of quick opportunities is really key in this industry. If somebody gets a great price on distillate or a great price on wholesale flower, and they need to take advantage of it, Upwise Capital is a great source for them to turn to quickly to get a quick bridge loan and then possibly transition them into one of the secured products later to get them the cheaper cost of capital and the cheaper debt.
Gotcha. So that's really the benefit there of unsecured financing is it might come with a little more stringent requirements, but it's a lot more accessible for operators in need of capital.
Unsecured is less stringent requirements, right? So it's very quick and very little documentation needed, but it's a higher cost of capital.
Gotcha.
The secured financing, the underwriting process is going to be much more rigorous. The credit officers are going to ask for much more documentation, personal financial statements, projections, information on the property or equipment or type of asset that they're securing. So those products take much more due diligence and time. As referred to the unsecured non-dilutive capital, we request an application, bank statements, some financials, and we can have an offer to an operator in a day and have money in their bank account within 2 business days. Wow. So it's a 2 to 3 business day process. It's very quick financing. You're paying a little bit for that cost, but again, taking advantage of opportunities and taking advantage of the need for bridge capital is really key in this industry for any type of operator, whether it's a dispensary, a manufacturer, a lab, any type of cannabis company. We see all different types. So, capital access and debt capital access is key, especially when the equity markets are dried up right now.
Yeah. You're not wrong about that. You explained to us some of the benefits of both unsecured and secured, but from your perspective, dealing with operators throughout the industry, what are the most common mistakes you see that they make when they're trying to?
So many.
Where do you begin? Or what are some of those?
Yeah,
what's the most
of course.
pressing one?
So, the common mistakes that we see the most is, first of all, is them paying upfront due diligence fees, right? We're a very honest firm. We pride ourselves on, if we're brokering a transaction, only charging a fee based on the success of a deal going through. So a lot of brokers in this space, they try and take advantage of cannabis operators, and they'll charge an upfront due diligence fee. And then the deal doesn't go through and they don't get that fee reimbursed. And now they have a bad taste in their mouth for any type of cannabis broker in the industry. And we have to wear a black eye for that other broker's mistake of charging a fee, or that borrower's mistake of paying that fee up front. So if I was anybody, my first suggestion would be, if anybody's charging you an upfront due diligence fee that isn't involved with evaluating some sort of real estate, equipment, or doing an appraisal, something like that, a third-party report, it's a scam. Do not pay the upfront fees. It gives brokers like us who are honest a very bad name. Next is really just understanding what's out there in the cannabis debt markets, and understanding that you're not going to get a traditional cost of capital, and you're not going to get those traditional bank type rates. So a lot of times we see borrowers that come to us. Perfect example is Silver Peak, a very profitable business that we funded. He came to us. He was doing $10 million EBITDA positive. He was looking for $20 million, and he had no assets. And we said to him, in order to really get that type of money, we need some collateral and security. I think you'll get $12 million. And he's like, that's only, very little times EBITDA, like 1.25 times EBITDA, right? And he was looking for 2 times EBITDA, which is sometimes normal in a traditional environment. And he shopped around for 8 months and then came back to us, and he was like, hey, I need the deal to go through in 2 months. And we pushed it through for him. We ended up doing $2.5 million on balance sheet, and $10 million through a private debt fund, through a senior secured debt that ended up buying out our loan. And he's forever grateful. He wrote a review on our website saying, Joe Lustberg is the only person who told me how it was from day one. And that's really who we are, is we tell you what the rate's going to be, what we think we can get for you, and then we execute and get it done. And a lot of people don't see that in the cannabis space. So really, borrowers' expectations just really need to be managed a little bit better. They just really need to have all their ducks in a row. We see a lot of times where borrowers come to us very early without the cannabis experience, without a deck prepared. We really need to have that due diligence ready to be able to have high-level conversations with these private debt funds.
Yeah, but when they do have that due diligence prepared, it sounds like, based on the story you just told, that Upwise Capital and you are really willing to work with borrowers and operators to make something work here, huh?
Yeah, we're the most creative, I would say, and we have a lot of different sources. We really do pride ourselves on being a trusted source for cannabis operators, not just on the debt side, but we bring value in so many different ways. We recommend insurance companies, we recommend consultants that help them to run their grows if they don't have experience, lawyers, accountants. We're at these expos and exhibiting every week. So we know so many people in the cannabis industry that, for us, we bring value on the debt side, but we also bring value in making good recommendations for people. And especially when it comes to equipment financing, that's really a big part of our business. We work with a lot of manufacturers throughout the industry, like Fluence, PIP, Glow Glide, FOS, Grow Generation, some of the larger equipment manufacturers. It's because we do so much volume of business with them They also will sometimes, give us a small discount on the lights, 10% here. So we pass that discount down to our operators so that they're able to save some money on the lights. And then we provide the financing for those lights, or for the racking system, or for the HVAC, or for whatever we're building out. Really, our goal as a debt capital provider is not just to be able to provide debt, but also to bring value and knowledge to these companies so that they're able to grow and be successful. Our interests are aligned with these companies to really, really grow and to really be successful, because for us, we want to see them grow so they keep coming back to us and graduate into better programs, and we're able to get them that cheaper cost of capital once they're a profitable business down the road.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a true partnership Upwise Capital is looking for in some of these borrowers and operators. But I'm curious, Joe, from your perspective, you told us some of the mistakes that you see borrowers make and how to avoid those. But from your chair, what are you looking for in a borrower? What is ideal, and what are really some of the checkpoints that need to be met?
Yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, credit score is always a component when looking at any type of credit profile. But really, it's in certain transactions, we're looking at the liquidity of the borrower. We're looking at their personal financial statements to see what type of investments and cash they have on hand to service the debt. We're looking at if they've raised equity, if it's a startup, right? And how much equity have they raised, who's committed on that equity, what that cap table actually looks like. Then all lenders in the cannabis space, they want to see cannabis experience. They need somebody on the team who's going to be able to run that cannabis grow operation, run that dispensary, and they need to have some sort of experience. And then you're looking at the sponsors and who the sponsors are. Do they have that financial guy? Do they have that cannabis grower? Do they have, the CEO who's going to run it on a day-to-day operations? What does that team look like? And then what is that team's ability to execute on their business plan is really the most important. Because if we see a startup deal that's construction financing or equipment financing, like you said, our interests are aligned with them. We need to know that they're going to be able to perform, they're going to be able to build that facility, and they're going to be able to hit certain checkpoints along the way where they're actually cropping out within the timeline that they said they were going to meet.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there I found interesting was you're talking about how the experience level is so important, whether that's having the master grower or whoever that might be. But as you know, as this industry grows, there's a lot of new faces and new operators who want to dip their toes into the cannabis industry. Are you still willing to work with people on that degree too? How do people kind of work around?
Yeah, we're located in New York. So, I mean, grew up in New York. The East Coast is becoming a very big part of the growth in cannabis. And we see that New York is going to be a swing state. New Jersey is coming on board, Connecticut. We've done a lot of business in Massachusetts. So we do startup financing. Just think about it from a lender's perspective, right? Somebody's starting up a cannabis business, and they have an idea to open a dispensary, open a grow operation. We need to understand that if everything hits the fan, there's some way and some recourse for us to be able to get that money back. So the true products that we offer for startups are equipment financing, which is secured by the equipment. So if you're doing a build out of a facility, and you'd be surprised what we consider equipment, security equipment, HVAC, lighting, racking, a lot of the grow equipment, any of the extraction equipment, all of that stuff is considered equipment that we're able to finance. And then also build outs and construction financing. So when we do a construction financing loan, there's two ways to approach it. One way is based on the as completed cannabis value of the facility. So we look at a facility based on the as completed cannabis value, and we'll lend them enough money to do their full build out with all the tenant improvements and all the CapEx that's needed to build it out. The perfect example is, we got a deal in Massachusetts, right? The guy is a real estate developer. He gets a license on his building that he owns for 100,000 square feet of canopy space. So he's going to do a grow facility. It's going to cost him $17 million to do that build out. So he goes to banks, he goes to other sources that he knows because he's a developer, and he gets offers for like $6 million at 8% to give a loan on his building and come in first mortgage position, first lien position on the building. So we look at that same facility that they value at $6 million real estate value at a 250 per square foot of canopy valuation, right? So 250 on 100,000 square feet, that's a $25 million valuation. Once the building is completed with all the bells and whistles, the lights, the HVAC, the racking, everything built out. So normally that operator would have to do it in phases and build it out in phases. But if it comes to somebody like us who understands cannabis valuation, we're now going to value that at $25 million once it's complete, and we'll lend him 70% loan to value to build out that facility. So we'll give him the $17 million to do everything, right? We put it in a construction reserve, but he's going to pay more for it because you're getting cannabis value. So cannabis value is typically anywhere from like 12 to 15% plus points. You're looking at the ability to leverage your asset at a much, much higher valuation and the ability to build out your facility quickly. So we're always talking to borrowers, and it's really, they have to do the balancing act of, do I finance it at real estate value, get some equipment financing and raise some equity, or do I finance it at cannabis value and do the entire build out in one shot and get to market quicker? So what's more important to you, the cheaper cost of capital and waiting longer, or spending a little bit more and getting into the market quicker? In these states like New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, it's first to market. So paying that cannabis valuation sometimes does make sense. So it's really a decision that these borrowers have to make. And that's the conversation we have every day, is we can leverage it at cannabis value, or we can leverage it at real estate value and do some equipment financing. It's your choice how you want to do it. The easiest and best route would be the cannabis valuation, do it all in one shot, get it done quickly. If there's any equipment left over, we just put an equipment financing lease in place.
That's a really helpful explanation between the difference between cannabis value and real estate value. And based on that explanation, Joe, would you say that cannabis value is more common for operators in new states, maybe like in New York, New Jersey, that's just coming online and they want to just get going, whereas maybe someone in Colorado, California is more willing to go the real estate route because there's no race anyway?
Yes, it depends. It depends the operator that you're dealing with, right? So if they want the cheaper cost of capital, they're more experienced operator, they're an MSO, a publicly traded company, they're going to look at the real estate valuation. But we also see big MSOs taking cannabis value, right? So anytime you do a cannabis value loan, they get a cannabis real estate appraisal done. And it comes with a few different numbers in that appraisal, right? One is the sale lease comps of similar size facilities in the area and what they're leasing for. The other is all the tenant improvements and the CapEx that's going to be done to the facility. How much is that going to cost and go into the property and contribute to the property? Then it's the liquidation value of the real estate. And then they also give you a business enterprise value if you ask the appraiser to do it, which also helps the operator to go out there, raise equity, know what their business is valued at. So we always say it's a good advantage to have a cannabis valuation. We never tell borrowers to do it themselves because the lender is going to want to use their specific cannabis appraisal company. We use Colliers, BBG, and Newmark Knight. Those are really the three best cannabis appraising companies out there. They have a strong understanding. They're national firms. So again, these borrowers need to make that decision one way or another, which way to go. But, we'll kind of give them both options, and we can even issue a term sheet for cannabis value and also issue a term sheet for real estate valuation, and then have them make the decision on what option works best. But the more stabilized operators, we're able to get them a cheaper cost of capital. So, we have some groups that are lending as cheap as 6.4%, 6.49% over 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. We have banks that are lending in the industry at like 5.5% to large MSOs. We have some really good, cheap banks signed up that are offering good options to cannabis operators that weren't available, a few years ago. So we are seeing more smaller credit unions and state-by-state banks getting into the cannabis space. Sometimes they're lending to their special purpose entity that they have set up. So they'll set up a real estate entity or a holding company and they'll lend to that entity instead. But there is cheaper cost of capital available for more established operators, especially on the larger transaction side. If it's a very large deal, $15 million plus, we have one family office that goes out, 7 to 10 years. They're looking at cannabis valuation on properties. They need first lien position on the property, but they're offering great rates. I've seen them go as cheap as 10%, but typically they want like mid-teens, low to mid-teens. So those type of rates in the cannabis industry, the large MSOs and the large companies are getting. So we have those options available for some of those smaller operators as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's stay on that topic for a second here, because I'm curious. You mentioned how more banks have kind of joined the industry in recent years through a number of ways. Is that something you see more of happening in the future? Do you think more banks and low interest lenders are eventually going to enter into this space?
Yes, we do.
Interesting.
We're seeing them. There's banks in Massachusetts that lend to cannabis. There's banks in New York that lend to cannabis, California. You just really need to know and have a great relationship with them. Again, a lot of them aren't lending at cannabis value. They don't understand the difference between cannabis and real estate value yet. So they're not putting much value on the licenses and other cannabis assets that these operators put a lot of money into. So it's a little bit different approach when you're going to a bank, but we have, I would say, about 30 now that are in the industry. There's also a compliance company that we work with, Green Check Verified. Peter Sue, he was at a couple banks here in Manhattan. He's been in the cannabis industry for a while. They're helping banks to become compliant, within the cannabis industry and keeping them compliant. So software like that will hopefully help other banks to enter into the space. But because it's federally illegal, FDIC insured banks really, it's a gray area for them to step into the cannabis space. So they're not lending a lot of times to the plant touching entities. And if they are, sometimes they'll require you to bank with them. So you'll have to move your bank account to them, be banking with them for a little while, show them that the money is going through the account, that you're, doing good, and then they'll be willing to extend you credit, a line of credit or a loan or, whatever the case may be. We just saw the other day, Chase gave cookies a loan, right? So if Chase is giving cookies a loan, it was to their to their clothing entity or their parent company, where they're going to operate their big office out of. But, if Chase is giving cookies a loan, it definitely gives me a lot of optimism that there will be banks coming into the space. And even when banks do come into the space and start lending, it still won't affect our business so much because there will always be a need for our quicker capital and different types of products like equipment financing and inventory and account receivable and purchase order and so on and so on.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear. And really what I've gathered so far is that there are a lot of options available to operators out there, both with the banks you guys have networked with and with Upwise Capital on the unsecured front, on the secured front. I want to kind of take a step back from a 30,000 foot view here and really ask you a big picture question. What is the current state of debt capital markets in cannabis right now? How does that stand? What's it look like from your purview?
So we're definitely on the front lines. We see a lot of cannabis transactions from all different perspectives. Access to debt capital now is becoming a little bit easier for cannabis operators. There are other sources out there. Like I said, I have a lot of sources signed up and under contract with us here at Upwise, but it's still the biggest obstacle when you speak to a cannabis operator.
Yep.
If you ask them what is your biggest obstacle in running your business, it's raising capital at traditional rates. And unfortunately, until it's federally legal, they won't be able to go to the big banks and won't be able to get the same type of loan that any traditional business will. So, there still is that cannabis tax that cannabis operators pay. But there are great solutions out there, and we're trying to be that liaison between the lenders and the operators. Our goal is to really point you in the right direction, pair you with the best option that fits your business need, and just be honest about it, right? And that's the biggest thing. Is we have reviews from cannabis operators. You go to these cannabis debt firms websites, they hide everything. Everybody's so on the down low about it. We are not. Upwise is out there. We're speaking at Benzinga. We're speaking here on Cannabis Business Times. We're at all the expos. So we're looking to partner with operators and just really looking to grow our network and increase the amount of capital that we help facilitate.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you point that out, Joe, that Upwise is really focused on the cannabis industry as opposed to just looking at it as an offshoot of what you guys do. It's really a focus and core of what you guys do. So in your own words, what's the difference between Upwise Capital and the other firms out there that exist?
Yeah, I would just say our understanding of the cannabis debt markets, equity markets are dried up right now, and there is good options out there for cannabis operators. You go to these conferences and debt capital is a very big conversation. So the difference between us is our understanding of cannabis valuation, and then the ability to offer all these different products. There's no other firms out there like Upwise that offer, every single product that we offer: equipment financing, sale leasebacks, construction financing, real estate financing, purchase order financing, inventory financing. You name it, we have an option for it. We have some of the most out-of-the-box solutions. And then we also come from the traditional financing world, right? So I funded my first cannabis transaction in 2014. Prior to that, I was working for a company called BizFi. They were the largest unsecured direct lender in the country. They originated around $50 to $100 million a month. And we built out a platform for them where we did real estate loans, equipment loans, SBA loans, term loans, line of credits. So we have that access to that platform and those groups of lenders still. So sometimes we're able to get operators approved for traditional options with traditional banks using a special purpose entity or using an existing business, right? So because we have the ability to pivot to the traditional banks as well, gives us a much bigger advantage than most other firms out there.
Yeah, and what I'm also gathering from this conversation here, Joe, is flexibility and options. That's what Upwise is offering a lot of. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, flexibility, options, speed, and honesty. We like to call ourselves the wise, transparent solution for cannabis operators and traditional businesses. Cannabis is it's about 90% of my business now.
Wow.
And we have a whole cannabis division, so we're definitely growing. This year, we hope to deploy around $200 million to cannabis operators. So we're very active in the cannabis space and just looking to bring value and bring good options to cannabis companies. If anybody's looking for debt capital, we're a great source, and we're definitely the most honest source out there. We'll always, even if you send us a term sheet from somebody else, we'll tell you if it's a good term sheet, and if it is, we'll point you in the right direction, right? We're just looking to do good by our operators, because in the long run, you got to be good people for it to come back to you in the long run, right?
Yep. It's a new industry, but if it's going to be one that's around for a while, like we all think, you guys certainly seem to be wanting to build those relationships, which is really unique. Joe, you even mentioned that 90% of your own work right now is cannabis related, huh?
Yeah, 90%. We still have the real estate division that does traditional. We still have traditional cash advances as well. We have a whole cannabis team. Myself runs the cannabis division with a couple of my associates. So we are focused on cannabis. Every trade show, we just sponsored MJ Unpacked, the Last Prisoner Project. Social equity is a big part of our push here at Upwise Capital. We want social equity applicants in the East Coast to be able to get those cannabis licenses and run successful businesses. And we want to be a part of their growth as well. And then, we're just really focused on financing cannabis companies in any way that we can help.
Yeah, gotcha. I've got one more question for you here, Joe. I know we're going to jump into our presentation and learn a little bit more about some of the products Upwise Capital offers. But before that, with that in mind, that cannabis is 90% of what you do, you've got a whole division, a whole team dedicated to it. Put simply, what are Upwise Capital's goals in the cannabis industry, short term and long term?
Of course. So short term, we are growing. We're currently 13 employees. We look to be around 2025 by the end of Q2. So we are looking for office space here in Manhattan. If anybody's interested in cannabis job, salary, good base, ability to make good money, please reach out. You can go on our website. There's a place to fill out applications as well and send your resumes. Other than that, we are looking to raise capital ourselves. We are also looking to build out an application eventually. So our goal is to have an app, which is a full service platform where we provide all of our different debt options to cannabis operators through this app. But we're going to bring it to a whole new level and really provide much more value, where we'll have accounting services, marketing services, lawyer services, insurance guys, credit card processing guys, banking, and just really give cannabis operators a place to go to find out the difficult questions that they don't know the answers to. So for us, it's just, I say it over and over again, I want to bring value to my customers. I am very passionate about the cannabis industry. We are not like most other firms. We're young, we're energetic, we are very passionate about cannabis. We are involved in the industry, involved in all the events. So we just want to help businesses grow while we build out this platform, and eventually we'll launch it at MJ BizCon or one of the big events one day. But in the future, it's just really grow our team, increase the amount of capital that we deploy, and keep finding more and more operators to work with. So if you guys are looking for financing, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to work with you.
Well, if Upwise is looking for more and more operators to work with, I don't think that'll be an issue based on just some of the comments and questions we've had here. So at this point of the presentation, Joe is going to kind of walk everyone through Upwise's product suite. We're going to go over the different types of debt options available to cannabis operators through Upwise's lending platform. And at the same time, as I'm sure most attendees have seen by now, there is a chat open, a Q&A here. Please feel free to insert your questions for Joe or Craig in the chat. And we're going to kind of jump into a little bit of a presentation from Joe here.
All right. So this is our Upwise Capital product suite. It kind of breaks down all the different options that we offer for cannabis operators. We are created to provide financing to cannabis operators. We are 100% committed to the industry, and our knowledge of cannabis, of the plant, of the different cultivation facilities, and of cannabis valuation is really what differentiates us from most other companies out there. The different financing options that we offer are non-dilutive working capital. That is on balance sheet up to $10 million, typically anywhere from 3 months to as long as 18 months. This is for businesses that have cash flow and have been in operations for at least 6 months. Rates range on a factor rate anywhere from a 110 to a 136. That equivalates to about 2 to 3% per month, typically. So it really just depends on the strength of the borrower, their credit score, what their financials look like. That'll determine what type of rate that they'll actually get. Then we have the equipment financing options. This is a very big part of our business here at Upwise. Like I said earlier, we are partnered with some of the largest manufacturers in the industry, Fluent, PIP, Glow Glide, just to name a few, FOS. All of them send us their equipment to finance. So if equipment manufacturers are trusting us, there's a good reason that we're actually getting the deals done and we're able to finance this equipment at really cheap rates. So we have a couple different options here. Go as low as 6% for an established operator that's profitable, been in business for at least 2 years, does require a personal guarantee typically. Typically looking for at least 51% ownership to personally guarantee. Rates will range. We have a couple different sources. If it's a startup, we do have options for equipment financing as well, like I said earlier. So on a startup, it's going to be a lower loan to value. You're not going to get 100% loan to value on startup. You'll typically get, I would say, 60 to 70% loan to value on an equipment financing startup. So that means that the borrower has to come down with a 30 to 40% down payment on the equipment. We would then pay the equipment vendor the rest of the difference, the 60 to 70%. Then you're on a 3 to 5 year lease term. Typical rates for startup is anywhere from 15% to as high as 18%. Bad credit, we can still do. It's just going to be a higher interest rate. But if you do have good credit, you have the cannabis experience, you have the liquidity, we can get on the lower end of that spectrum, 12, 13, just really depending on the borrower. Then we have construction financing. This is a very big part of our business. I would say it's about 50% of our business these days, because we're seeing a lot of transactions in newer states. As these states go live, we're getting a lot of inquiries for people to do build outs of different types of cannabis facilities. So this requires a first lien position on the property. Typically, you're doing any type of ground up construction, any rehab, any build out, tenant improvements, FF&E, any mechanical upgrades that need to be done, lighting upgrades, all of that is included in this loan. For stabilized operators, it's anywhere from 6.49% to as high as 14%. For startup, it's anywhere from 12 to about 16%. Most groups fall in around 15%, 16% all in. So it really just depends on the sponsors and, how strong the credit profile is, depending on what the rate's going to be. We have funded these deals in as quick as 2 weeks. It's really going to depend on if the lender is going to require certain types of third-party reports. If they do require a cannabis appraisal, like we spoke about before, the cannabis appraisal takes some time. Right now, they're very busy, all these cannabis appraisers. So they're typically taking, at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks to turn around an appraisal. So you have to take that time into account, right? So once we issue a term sheet, you sign off on a term sheet, typically 30 days to get the appraisal done. From there, they'll close the transaction within 1 to 2 weeks. So we always say that 45 days is a good window if appraisals need to be done. If the borrower comes to us, they have all these third-party reports already, then we can close a deal in as quick as 2 weeks. So it's really going to depend on the due diligence needed for each transaction. Loan to value is anywhere from 60 to 70% loan to value or loan to cost. Loan to cost is based on the cost. Loan to value is based on the valuation of the building. Again, we're doing this based on the as completed cannabis value typically. So we're looking at similar lease comps in the area. We're coming up with that cannabis valuation, and we're lending 70% based on that value. Then we have real estate financing. We put this into a totally different bucket. So this is at just traditional real estate financing for, an asset, a cannabis asset. We can go up to $500 million. We could also do it based on the real estate value or the cannabis value. Terms range anywhere between 1 to 25 years. Typical terms are like 2 to 5 years. For larger operators, MSOs, publicly traded companies, and really profitable companies, we can get those traditional type mortgage rates, right? 6.49% on a 10-year term with a 25-year amortization. The property just has to be stabilized. And what I mean by stabilized means cash flowing, making money, and doing well. We can close these loans in as fast as 2 weeks. Typically takes 30 days. Loan to value is anywhere from 65% to 70% loan to value. If they're looking at real estate value and not cannabis value, then we're doing it based on 80% loan to value based on the alternative use value. Alternative use means if that cannabis dispensary was not operating there and I had to put a auto garage in there, what would that property be valued at that price? So there's 2 ways to approach it. Assets that can be used in these real estate financing deals. Sometimes these lenders will secure everything, right? They'll put a blanket lien across all business assets. That includes equipment, land, crops, purchase orders, inventory. That's really where we come into play, because if they do encumber all your assets, we could speak to them and say, hey, we need to carve out the equipment because we're getting new equipment, or we need to carve out the account receivable so we can do an account receivable line. So our relationships with these different lenders is really a great benefit to have on your side as well. Term loans is a very, very big portion of our business. These are for profitable cannabis companies. You must be showing a profit, or on your 2021 P&L and balance sheet, we want to see tax returns that show a profit. Because of what happened with the pandemic and in 2021, not a lot of cannabis companies are showing that profit. So if you're on the way to profitability and you have a great story, we can push it through with some of our term lenders. Loan amount is up to $50 million, anywhere from 1 to 5 year terms. For really good operators that know what they're doing, we can go as low as 10%. Typically it's going to be mid-teens, low to mid-teens, 12 to 16%. But if they're have bad credit, things like that, they have some high interest debt that we're consolidating, then it's going to be on the higher end, anywhere from like 18 to 20% over 3 to 5 years. Sometimes they'll do interest only payments if it's needed, but typically it's a fully amortized loan over the given term. Just really depends on the financial strength of the borrower and their ability to service the debt. Then we have purchase order financing. Not many people have anybody in the space who does purchase order financing. We have a couple hedge funds that will leverage purchase orders and offtake agreements. So if you are a manufacturer, a wholesaler, and you're looking to increase the amount of vendors that you have underneath you, and increase your amount of customers, this is a great way to access cash flow that normally is just cannabis operators are not able to access. So if you have purchase orders, we will leverage those purchase orders up to 100% financing, typically 75 to 100%, as fast as 2 weeks. Cost is anywhere from 1.5% to 3% a month. Again, going to depend on the sponsor and the underwriting and their credit profile. We do a lot of business in purchase order financing and inventory financing because it's two products that a lot of people do not offer. Next one, inventory financing. Same thing. It's going to increase your purchasing power. It's going to give you the ability to have cash on demand from your customers, right? So you have an invoice, an inventory on hand. We're able to leverage that inventory that you have on hand, typically up to 100%, and we have to have good vendors. So you have to have relationships there, relationships set up, anywhere from $200,000 to up to $10 million maximum. We do a lot of smaller deals with inventory financing in between, I would say, the $250,000 to $2 million range. Not a lot of cannabis operators keep a lot of inventory on hand. Hopefully they're getting cash on demand, but being able to offer your customers terms and being able to offer a line of credit for inventory financing is a great asset to have. It's just the cost is the principal amount plus the financing fees. It's going to really depend on how long you have the money out for. AR financing. So typically it's going to be 80% to 100% of the account receivable. Terms are typically up to 1 year. We're really looking to finance receivables that are 90 days or less. A lot of times right now in California, because of what's going on in the market, we're seeing a lot of inventory financing transactions where their payables, their account receivables aren't paying them on time. So there's a lot of account receivables over 90 days. So in those instances, we need a story, we need a relationship there. But typically we're going to finance anything that's 90 days or less, up to 80 to 100% of the invoice. It's typically around 1% a month. We have one group that if it's a really strong borrower, they'll do like 1 to 3% a month, 1 to 3% over the 90-day term. So we got one group approved for a 1% over 90 days, which is just great cost of capital. So we do have some really good options when it comes to the account receivable financing options. Then sale leasebacks. So not many borrowers are even familiar with what a sale leaseback is or how it works. So there's really two types of sale leasebacks. One sale leaseback is it's in the name, right? Sale leaseback. So you are selling your asset to a lender. The lender now owns your asset and they are leasing it back to you. Right. Some of the larger firms out there and publicly traded REITs offer some really, really competitive rates on sale leaseback. So it's based on certain cap rates. Their target amount is up to $150 million. They're typically looking for indoor facilities. Some of the REITs that we work with are specifically focused on greenhouses, and some are specifically focused on dispensaries. So we do have different sale leaseback options for real estate. So really what they're going to do is they're going to purchase the asset from you. They're going to put you on a long-term lease, typically anywhere from 10 years to 25 years. There's going to be rent escalations. So every few years, your rent is going to increase. And they're going to help you to do all the tenant improvements. So if you have a cultivation facility, they'll help you to build out your cultivation facility because they're your landlord. But with that comes cannabis lease rates, right? So you'll be leasing it at cannabis lease rates back from that, particular acquisition company that acquires the asset for you. There's also sale leasebacks on equipment. So if you purchase a bunch of equipment and it's newer equipment, it's not 2 years old, it's, you purchased in the last year, last 6 months, we can leverage that equipment that you own. Right. So typically that's going to be 80%, 70% loan to value, and we'll purchase that equipment, put you on a 3-year lease for you to lease back the equipment. And then at the end of the lease, you now own the equipment again. Same concept with the sale leaseback on the real estate. At the end of the lease, you would hope that they give you an option to buy back the real estate. So we do offer sale leaseback options. It's a great option for newer state operators in limited license states who are looking to come to the table or buy a cultivation, a manufacturing, a lab, or a dispensary, and they don't want to put a lot of the money up front and they haven't raised a lot of equity. That's a great way for us to purchase the asset for them and then put them on a lease. So a lot of operators don't know about this option. It is a great option. Then we have acquisition financing, where we help them to acquire existing businesses and profitable businesses. We've worked with many M&A companies that are acquiring different companies. In this industry, it's always best to try and be vertically integrated, where you're from seed to sale, right? You're manufacturing, you're creating the flower, and then you're also selling it in your dispensary, giving yourself the highest margins, right? So as companies, a lot of companies start off as just a dispensary, and then they want to get into manufacturing, then they want to get into cultivation, then they want to start a dab company. So as they're growing, we're a great source for them to acquire different businesses. We leverage their assets that they own, we leverage the cash flow, and then we also look at their target acquisition, right? If the target acquisition is a good, profitable company, then we know that that's going to bring much more to the bottom line once they own that company. So we have great sources on the senior debt side for that. A lot of family offices and hedge funds are great options for acquisition financing. And then in-house at Upwise, we really do not do credit card processing. It's still not something that's fully compliant with credit card processing regulations. But there are solutions out there, and we have a lot of different referral partners that send us deals. So we do send them deals back. So anybody on the credit card processing side who sends us cashless ATM transactions and different payment processing solutions. So like I said, we like to bring value. So we would refer that to somebody like somebody we work with at no charge. For us, it's just, again, bringing value to the cannabis operators. A lot of dispensaries need payment processing options. So we just see all these guys at the conferences, and we would refer you to the best guys that we think are in the industry. here are a couple of reviews, from some partners. Really, we get capital done quickly. We're, as you can see, we secured 2 million on balance sheet. A lot of companies do recommend us. If you go to our Trustpilot, you'll see that we have 5-star reviews. A lot of them are cannabis financing reviews. We are very active in the cannabis space, looking to deploy more capital. And we even have the 420 cannabis team, right? So going back to what you said earlier, Zach, we are 420 cannabis friendly. So if you have any questions, Craig, myself, and a few other of my guys are on the cannabis team. If you email 420 at Upwise Capital, that goes directly to about 4 or 5 of us. So we'll respond to you very quickly. We really pride ourselves on customer service and the ability to just answer any questions and get deals done very fast. So we're here for cannabis companies to really answer any questions and to be a real resource. So if you're looking to open a cannabis business, I really do suggest, taking a look at our website, going to our blog section. We have a whole blog section that's specifically geared towards cannabis operators and geared towards, putting different options out there for cannabis companies. So please make sure to look at our blog section, take a look at that, take a look at our website, all the different products. We put out so much content out there so that, cannabis operators don't make those common mistakes that we talked about earlier. So we want to be a resource for you. And, our partnership with Cannabis Business Times is definitely something that we appreciate. And, we want to be a resource for any questions that any subscriber or any partner of Cannabis Business Times and Upwise has. And we do accept referral partnerships and relationships. So if you're looking to sign up with Upwise and looking to send us transactions, again, email 420 at Upwise Capital. We do pay our referral partners as well. Some of our referral partners do not look for compensation. We always say those are the best ones, the accountants, the lawyers, the equipment manufacturing companies, where we're just mutually bringing value to each other. But, we understand that people are trying to make money just like us. And, we are out there to try and help as many businesses and as many cannabis operators just navigate the waters, because there's a lot of sharks out there. And, we're definitely a good boat to be on if you're trying to raise that capital.
Joe, I got to be honest with you. Based on the entire presentation, the questions we had before, and the comments I've seen here as well, that was a very comprehensive overview of all the options that exist, not in the industry entirely, but just with Upwise Capital as well. And going back to what we talked about earlier, flexibility, solutions, speed, and honesty. That's pretty much what I've gathered from this conversation here. That's what Upwise Capital does: kind of honesty, speed, solutions, and flexibility.
And passion, man. We're very passionate about the plant. We're very passionate about the flower. When you guys speak to credit officers, they're usually not like us, right? They're usually, sitting in their suits and in their office analyzing your financials and very rigorous and just ask their questions. Not us. We get on the plane, we tour the facilities, we talk to the operators, we make recommendations. We really try to be involved in their growth as a business. And, without our clients, Upwise is nothing, right? We're a family. It's a family-owned business. Me and my brother started this company. This feeds my daughter, my family, and all my employees. So we are more than grateful for our clients. And, you'll see just by speaking to us and working with us that we move quickly, we're honest, and we come through with what we say we're going to do, which is very, very difficult to find in the cannabis space. And hopefully more and more companies start to trust us and start to return to us. And, it's partnerships like yourselves that kind of give us that credibility out there, right? Of being that one-stop shop for financing. And really, we want to become the #1 financing marketplace for cannabis companies. And, hopefully we're on our way to executing that.
It certainly sounds like it, just based on, even some of the comments here from other people who have approved of your guys' work as well. I know we're running close to the deadline here. I want to thank everyone again for joining us for Upwise Capital's webinar today. Hopefully you've gotten a lot out of it. It sounds like a lot of people have been conversing with Craig in the chat here.
Nice.
I want to squeeze in a question or two if we can, Joe, if you got time for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just based on what I've seen in the chat a little bit. So we've talked about how you are working in the U.S. Across a number of states and operators. Does Upwise offer international financing?
So we do in certain areas, in certain places. Like we've seen deals in Colombia, we've seen deals in Puerto Rico. Canada, we do a lot of business in. The Canadian market definitely took a hit. It was tough to get things done that are not in close to city central areas in Canada. But recently, the market is bouncing back a little bit, and we are able to get deals done in Canada. We do have a few hedge funds that look at international deals. A lot of times they want to make sure that there is a path to collect that financing, because if you're internationally and they have a lien on your property in an international country, God forbid you default, they want to make sure they can collect. So sometimes they do require a borrower to be a U.S. citizen, to have some sort of assets in the United States, and to personally guarantee it. But we do have sources for international transactions. They're definitely not as easy as getting a transaction done in the U.S., but we are seeing transactions all over. Seeing deals in Germany, seeing deals in Israel. So we're definitely starting to come up with different avenues for those international transactions. Currently, we have a few hedge funds that will fund them though.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a question we saw in the comments there a few times. So certainly good to know. And going back to earlier, I think you mentioned it was about 30 banks you have currently in your network at Upwise?
Yes, correct.
And are those chartered or unchartered banks?
So it's a fine line you want to walk, right? So most of them are credit unions. So smaller credit unions or state chartered banks. But there are some FDIC insured banks that are lending to cannabis companies. But like I said, when they're lending to cannabis companies, they're doing it at arm's length. They're lending to the special purpose real estate entity, and they're saying, oh, this is a landlord, I'm lending to the landlord. Or they're lending to like these companies, they open payroll companies, and they open different sorts of companies. So they'll lend to a different corporation and also cross guarantee the cannabis corporation sometimes, or in the event of a default, have the personal guarantee. So there are more banks that are starting to enter into the space. That's kind of our little secret, to be honest with you, who it is, and the types of options that are out there. But as we see more and more coming into the cannabis space, like I said, they're only lending to the experienced guys that are profitable, running good businesses, have assets, and they're lending at lower loan to values. So do expect a good rate, but a lower loan to value on your assets and your loan.
Gotcha. Again, want to thank everyone for attending today. You will get a recording of today's session, be emailed to you afterwards. As Joe has mentioned numerous times, and Craig has mentioned in the chat here, 420-420 at upwisecapital.com is where you can find more information, or right online at upwisecapital.com. Joe, before we go, what should cannabis operators know about Upwise, and what do you want to tell them before we go?
I think we told them everything, but we can definitely just give us a call. If you have any questions in any new states, or if you're a larger MSO and operator, give us a shot, right? We have some really out of the box solutions, some cheaper cost of capital options. And if you're building out a facility, if you need construction or equipment financing, we're probably one of the best solutions out there. So we look forward to seeing everybody at the CWCB Expo next week. We are exhibiting at the Javits Center here in Manhattan. That's going to be from June 2nd to June 4th. Stop by our booth. It is booth number 238. And, go to upwisecapital.com, email us, and we look forward to speaking with you guys soon.
Again, Joe, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone in attendance today for attending Cannabis Business Times webinar in partnership with Upwise Capital here. Hopefully you learned from it, and sounds like Upwise will have some more contacts reaching out soon. So Joe, thank you again for your time.
Yeah, Zach, thank you for everything. And thank you, Cannabis Business Times. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great Memorial Day weekend. Take care.
Yeah, enjoy. Don't party too hard.